Welcome to Showcase Richmond. I'm Amy Carter. We are in Petersburg at Blandford Church and Cemetery, a very historic site in American history, and I'm joined by two guests, two members of the Petersburg Preservation Task Force, Chip Mann as well as Martha Atkinson. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Amy.
So first, Chip, tell us about the mission of the Petersburg Preservation Task Force.
When the city of Petersburg quit funding the museums a couple of years ago, a group of citizens stepped up and created the Petersburg Preservation Task Force, which is responsible for operating and managing the 3 city-owned museum sites in Petersburg. Now, the story of Petersburg, our mission is to tell the incredible, unique, historic story of Petersburg. And the story of Petersburg actually began several thousand years ago because there were Indians that were living on the fall line, and they had a trading site right near where the founding of Petersburg was. As far as English settlement in Petersburg, we are in the building that is the oldest building that documents English settlement in the area. It's Blandford Church. It was erected in 1735, but interestingly enough, it has a cemetery in which the first graves were earlier than that. They were as early as 1702.
And Martha, tell us a little bit more about the church. There's so much history here. We see the beautiful stained glass windows. Talk about how important those are.
Well, as Chip said, this was a church built in 1735, so it was an Anglican church originally. It essentially became abandoned at one point in the early 19th century. It was left essentially for 95 years, but was restored by the Ladies Memorial Association of Petersburg to create a Confederate Memorial Chapel, which is how these beautiful Tiffany windows came to be here. And they were placed between 1904 and 1912.
And talk a little bit in detail about the 2 that we see behind us here.
The 2 we see behind us, Virginia right on the right-hand side, is represented by St. John. Each window represents a state that fought during the Civil War. It fought in the Confederacy. John was picked to represent the state of Virginia. He is the youngest of the disciples. He's depicted as a very young man, as you can see. Tiffany created these windows and had total artistic control. And you can see certainly there are details that are best to be seen when you come here to visit our site. The goblet that he holds is a loving cup, and John was known as the apostle of love, or the apostle that Jesus loved best. You'll notice the little jeweled pieces on the handles of the chalice or loving cup. Also his right hand and left foot look as though he's reaching out or stepping out of the window, kind of a 3D effect. Each window is very unique in its design and execution, and that's what I think is so interesting. Besides the fact you have a beautiful background in both of these windows face east, and I think the backgrounds depict what looks like a sunrise in the early morning, which certainly would be very appropriate for this side of the church.
And talk about this one over here.
To our left, St. Peter represents Missouri, not a true Confederate state, but they were a border state. They felt very compelled to raise money to have their window placed here. St. Peter, represented here, has a beautiful, interesting green and mauve robe wrapped around him. Notice that he holds the keys to the kingdom in his right hand. Those are his symbol of sainthood. And also what's interesting in this particular window is the jeweled collar around his neck. Those are little pieces of glass that are just set on top of the actual window design. They're not part of the window, but they're set on top as sort of an extra special thing. And when you walk up closely, you can definitely see how they are set on top of the window itself.
Beautiful windows, so much history in this church as well as in the cemetery. For folks who want more information, I know you all provide tours as well. We should mention that if you want to learn more about the Petersburg Preservation Task Force, you can go to petersburgpreservationtaskforce.com, and of course you can always learn more about Virginia tourism at virginia.org, #LoveVirginia.